you talk about the four gods:
Yeah.
money, power, pleasure, fame.
Yeah.
So after I read that, I would have asked my friends, I said, what's my addiction? Hello, hello, hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. And I'm broadcasting today from my home office in Phoenix, Arizona. Generally, I'm broadcasting from my office in Old Town, Scottsdale, Arizona. And today we have the one person my whole company is excited to have on this program, because generally we have money guys, gold guys, finance guys, bankers. But today we have Arthur Brooks, who's a Harvard professor, and there's this book here, From Strength to Strength. Arthur, I have 12 books on my table of your book, and I give them to my friends. So you got to read this book here.
Thank you,
This is
Robert.
the most powerful. The right book always shows up at the right time. So I appreciate your book here.
Oh,
And
thank you.
My question is, did you write this book about me or for me?
Both. Both. I mean, the truth is that I wrote it for me, Robert. I mean, is the whole point. And I've had a nice career. I've been very fortunate. I've been able to make a good living, and I was working as a CEO, and I was running a big think tank in Washington, D.C., and I was having kind of a crisis about where my career was going and what I was trying to do. And I was looking for books that would answer the question about not to put too fine a point on it, but how does it end? I mean, I don't mean death. I mean, how does it end so that you can do good things and you can continue to be happy and not be disappointed about the fact that the party is ending at some particular point. And I was complaining about it. My wife, who's wise and sweet and good, she said, "Don't you have a PhD? Aren't you a social scientist? Why don't you write the book yourself?" And so I did the research over about a 5-year period, and I wrote it for you and me. I wrote it for all of your listeners. Look, the people who listen to your show are strivers. They're ambitious people.
Right.
Their life is their own startup, quite frankly. But the truth is that nobody talks about how that thing is supposed to change over the course of your life, and that you can get happier. You can actually achieve more success and deep meaning in your life, but it's not going to happen by accident. And that's why I wrote the book.
No. And what you say in there is that, like years and years ago, I was in, there was a thing called EST, seminars,
Yeah.
with Werner Erhard and all that. And I was listening to one of their trainers. He says, most people live their lives like this. He said they live from +1 to -1,
Yeah.
+1, -1. Their life doesn't change. They're just kind of waiting for the end.
Yeah.
And there's guys like you and me who are going up and down and up and down. So when you wrote this book here, I don't know how I got it. My friend gave it to me. And he says, you got to read this book because you're addicted to success.
Yeah.
There's an addiction to success. And so as you describe in there, you hit a peak and you crash. You peak and you crash. So all the people listening to this podcast right now with Arthur Brooks, I highly recommend Strength to Strength for there, because your addiction is going up and down.
Right.
It's like Tiger Woods. You remember he was the greatest golfer of all times. And then I think his wife takes a 9-iron to his car or something.
Right.
You talk about the decline.
Yeah.
And every athlete goes to decline.
Yeah.
But entrepreneurs many times don't know they're in decline, because it's not like it's not like they're playing the PGA or playing basketball or football.
Right.
So an entrepreneur doesn't know they're in decline.
Right.
And that's
Until
why they go
much
up,
later.
down.
Yeah, that's right. That's
up and down, up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
And so I want to thank you. Everybody, please get this book here, Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks, the right book at the right time. And I'll start with a start. I think that was me you were sitting behind. There was some asshole yelling at his wife on the plane. And, I said, God, that's been me so many times.
I know. Me too, Robert. I know.
Let's start with that. How did the book start with that?
Well, I was going through this process, this kind of, emotional process of how I was trying to understand my own life. And I was I was about 50 years old at the time. And I was noticing that certain things that used to be easy were getting hard. Other things were actually getting easier. I didn't understand the way that my skills were changing, and how I should be thinking about my future. How long should I do it? What should I be expecting, et cetera? And I heard this conversation behind me on a plane one night. I was doing what all strivers do. I was traveling around doing my thing, having as much success as possible, because I'm an addict, right? I'm like a monkey on cocaine. It's like, give me more all the time. And I was on one of these long plane flights. I was always on, tapping away on my laptop, and I heard a conversation near me on an airplane. It was nighttime, so it was dark. I couldn't see it. I could tell by their voices that it was somebody who was quite elderly, probably mid-80s. And he was talking to somebody I assumed to be his wife, and he was complaining that he might as well be dead. And I'm thinking, wow. Now, I mean, my laboratory as a social scientist is overheard conversation, quite frankly. So they had all my attention as a scholar and as a human being. And then he goes on to say that, it's, that nobody remembers him anymore, that nobody cares about him anymore. And his wife is trying to reassure him it's not true. I knew she was lying to him, because that's what our wives are supposed to do, right? It's like, no,
Life's job.
lies, sweetheart. Yeah. And after after a little while, they stopped talking, and I went back to my work. But at the end of the flight, when the lights turned on and we all stood up and I turned around, I wanted to get a look, just put a face to the voice, just to get a concept of it. And it was one of the most famous men in the world. It was somebody that, like you, it wasn't you, but it was somebody who, like you, has done 10x what most people have been able to do, and really important stuff that's changed people's lives. This guy was a real hero, but unlike you, his success stopped a long time ago. And he was suffering because he was thinking back to his glory days, and didn't understand why things couldn't keep going. So I thought about that a little bit, and I went home, and it was kind of a delicate time in my own life, and I said to my wife Esther, it's like, honey, I heard this conversation, and I told him who it was, and she was kind of amazed by that. This is a real American hero, very famous and rich, etc. And I said, I don't want to be that in 40 years. I don't want to be telling you when I'm 85 years old that I might as well be dead and nobody remembers me anymore. And she said, well, figure it out, man. Figure it out. Use the tools that you understand about human behavior. You suffered through a PhD for a reason. Use it for your own life and help other people in the situation. And so I did a very long research project. And Robert, I think I might have cracked the code about why this happens to people, to strivers. This is not throwing a dart into the population. And it's strivers, and why it happens, and what they can actually do proactively to make sure that they go from strength to strength, as opposed to from strength to weakness.
Right. What Arthur is talking about here, like, think about pro sports. You're a basketball star, you're making millions of dollars, and next thing you come down, you decline. Well, the same thing happens to entrepreneurs and business people, all of us who are strivers. Whereas most people, as this guy was talking about, they massage their lives between +1, -1, +1.
Yeah.
They don't go too high, they don't stay too low. And I would say that's about 80% of the population.
Oh yeah, more.
They just kind of stay. Yeah, they just stay in this bandwidth.
Yeah.
But guys like you and I are going up and then down. Rich, poor, famous, taken, blasted in the papers. Stuff like that happens.
Yeah.
It takes its toll.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. And it's basically like any other sort of addiction. And by the way, Robert, the brain chemistry is the same as it is with people who are going from feast to famine in their drug addiction. And so people who insist on having outsized psychological experiences from drugs, then they tend to, they get way too much dopamine in their brain, gives them an enormous sense of euphoria, but then they crash. And people think, well, I'm not addicted to drugs. I'm not addicted to alcohol. I'm not chasing gambling wins. I'm not using pornography. None of the bad stuff. But your brain works the same way. Your rewards come from success. If you're a success addict, which is to say, I only feel alive when I'm special. I only feel completely human when I'm winning. And when I'm not winning, when I'm just ordinary, like I'm an ordinary person, where most people would be like, yeah, +1, -1, it's awesome. For you, that's -20. And -20 feels pretty bad.
Right. So I want to go into a couple of things. I've torn your book apart here. It's a fabulous book. Every page was Arthur speaking to me.
Yeah.
He knows me.
You're my brother, Robert. You're my brother.
I know. But you talk about the 4 gods: money, power, pleasure, fame.
Yeah.
So after I read that, I would have asked my friends, I said, what's my addiction?
Yeah.
Money, power, pleasure, or fame?
What'd they say?
Would you go into those the 4 fake gods, you call them, or something?
Those are the idols. And this actually comes from Aristotle, believe it or not. He was an incredibly astute social scientist. He just didn't have the data. He was right on everything, but now we have the data. And what he talked about, and what the medieval philosophers who followed him talked about, was that people, they believed that, the philosophers in the 13th century, they were all Christian or Muslim or Jewish in Europe at least. And so they were religious. And they said that what people really want is God. but God is inconvenient because there's lots of rules and lots of one-sided conversations. So people will look for God-like things, and there are 4 that are idols that people chase: money, power, pleasure, and fame, or, prestige, admiration of other people, Instagram followers, whatever, right? Those things. Honor is really what Thomas Aquinas called it. Now, that's incredibly astute, even for our listeners who are not religious at all. What they are the things that distract you from your happiness. These are the things that promise everything but don't deliver. So money per se will never bring happiness. It will allow you to live a life where you can love other people more abundantly. This is a point that you've made in your work for decades, that money isn't the point. It's what you do with the money. But when people make money the idol, it's a huge problem. Power, same thing. Pleasure, hugely dangerous and deleterious when people seek pleasure for the sake of pleasure. And last but not least is fame, which these days in the internet culture is unbelievably dangerous. 40% of 6th graders say they want to be professional YouTubers. That's a big problem, right? That's a huge problem under the circumstances. And so what I play with a little game I play with my MBA class. I mean, I teach the MBA students at the Harvard Business School. So they're very, very, they're on a track for enormous success. But I say, all of you have an idol. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to serve that idol, but this is the tendency that it's going to display that's always going to betray you. But it's one of these things, and they don't know quite what it is until we play a little game. What's your idol? And this is what you actually wanted to play with your friends too, Robert. So let's play. What do you say? Should we play What's Your Idol?
Well, I asked my friends that. I gave them all money, power, pleasure. That didn't read your book.
What did they say?
And I thought all of them would say was money.
Yeah, but they didn't, did they?
No. It's fame.
See, this is the thing.
And I said to my best friend, I said, why? I want fame? He goes, of course. I'm going. So Arthur, it was kind of news to me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was an interesting game.
Yeah, I know.
It's not pleasure.
No. You'll defer your gratification all day long. Of course. Strivers are very good at deferring their gratification. Many strivers don't care about power at all. I mean, that's like a corporate America kind of deal. Politicians, I don't know. They often want money, but only because money is a scorecard. That's what they care about, is the scorecard. And they want to be appreciated. They want to be admired for their incredible success. That's a lot of what we see. Yeah. And by the way, Robert, that's me too. You and I, we have the same idol. And, you do all these good things and people pay you for them. It's very remunerative. It's very rewarding, right? But the whole point is that it's incredibly satisfying for people to say, good job, your book changed my life. You've given me so much pleasure already in the radio show today, because you told me the famous Rich Dad, Poor Dad author told me that my book changed his life. Day made, year made. Why? Because that's my idol. Yeah. Because you served my idol.
Yeah. So Arthur, I got this. Again, the book is called Strength to Strength, Arthur Brooks. If you're addicted to success, like if you want, more money, power, fame, pleasure, please read this book. This book came at the right time, at the right price, because I was down here. You call it the decline. Yeah. So when we come back, I'm going to ask you a couple other questions, because, we all go up, we go down. It's a sine curve. It goes back up again. Yeah. And I was coming down. I met a woman just today before this call. She's about my age. She hit bottom and she's going deeper. Yeah. She cannot get out of the trough, should we say. Yep. It's really sad. I mean, she's homeless. She's got no teeth. Her mother and father gave her everything. They were Stanford PhDs, and they gave me everything. Yeah. And then she lost it in 2008. And she says, how do I get it back? And I'm going to give her this book here. But she's already pretty far gone. I mean, she's homeless and all this, but she never made the turn. Yeah. And so we come back from strength to strength. As we come down, how do you make the turn back up? So all of you stay tuned. All of you who are addicted to success, money, power, pleasure, or fame, this book here, Strength to Strength, is your book. And I was saying to Arthur before we came on, my whole company is more excited about you than any other guest we've ever had on.
That's great.
So Arthur, we'll be right back.
Thank you, Robert.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Kiyosaki, co-host of the Rich Dad Radio Show. And I want to thank today's sponsor, our friends at Gold Alliance. We should all be concerned about high inflation, a looming recession, the very troubled banking system, and out-of-control spending in Washington. And the fact is, during every major crisis in U.S. history, Many of those who fail to prepare watch their savings, investments, and retirement funds plummet, while others with the foresight to own gold help preserve their wealth and purchasing power. Now, we're facing several major crises at once, and we may soon face even more economic turmoil. So please don't wait. Consider gold and put yourself on the road to financial peace of mind. The new free 2023 Gold Guide from our friends at Gold Alliance can show you how. Just visit www.freegoldguide.com/Robert or call 1-800-473-4585. Republican governor and conservative commentator Mike Huckabee says Gold Alliance is the only gold provider he recommends to his friends and family. Please visit freegoldguide.com/Robert or call now at 1-800-473-4585. Thank you.
Feeling powerless over current events and your financial future? Financial freedom is your freedom. Robert Kiyosaki is the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Over 40 million people have taken Robert's advice. Now it's your turn. Attend Robert's free virtual wealth building event. Claim your free access now at richdadfree.com. Don't wait, access is limited. Go to richdadfree.com. That's richdadfree.com.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. Today I have a very special guest, Arthur Brooks, Harvard professor. He's the author of this book, From Strength to Strength. And I asked Arthur if he wrote the book about me or for me, or did he know me that well? And generally we have money guys on, gold guys, bankers, and all this stuff. But Arthur is the most popular guy we've had so far. So Sandra wants to ask him.
Hi, Sandra.
Yeah. We're so excited to have you on. And
Sandra's my personal assistant. So
yeah, it's so nice to meet you, Sandra.
It's lovely to meet you. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the difference between males and females and the idols that you guys talk about and how they kind of manifest differently for each gender.
Yeah, so I've looked as a happiness specialist, as a social scientist specializing in happiness. I've looked at the difference in happiness between men and women for a long time. And for many years, generations, women were always happier than men. You found that, for example, single women are happier than single men. Married women are happier than married men. Widowed women are way happier than widowed men. I told my wife that one. She's like, no kidding, right? But here's a weird thing, Sandra, in the data. Men and women have been converging in happiness over the past 25 years, not to the higher level of women, to the lower level of men. Women have been getting unhappier faster than men. And the biggest reason is because gender differences in the workplace and in families has changed. And so women traditionally had kind of healthier lives with respect to happiness because they had a lot thicker relationship networks. That not just people you work with, but people in families, the neighbors, your children's friends, parents, the people in the church. Women traditionally in families, they were responsible for establishing the social network of the whole family. And the result was it was an incredibly, it fortified them. It fertilized all of the happiness they have in their life, and they're getting that less and less and less. So in the old days, you'd find that women had different idols than men, to be sure. And now you're finding that those things are converging, that women and men are, kind of equally idolatrous and unhappy today, which is sort of a sad state of affairs, isn't it?
Very sad.
Well, Rodney Dangerfield said, he says, I thought about divorcing my wife, but why should I make her happy?
Yeah, women have more real friends. Men have more deal friends. And that's another one of the reasons. It's one of the superpowers that women have because they tend to bond at a deeper psychological level, whereas men talk about stuff, right? Men talk about things. And when those things involve work, then they just are basically in deals with each other and they can't dig in emotionally, which is one of the reasons that men have shallower friendships.
So you're talking about how in strength to strength, how a lot of times I'm pushing 80 right now.
Yeah, you look great.
But you also talk about well, thank you.
I could be
Asian
president
blood.
if I had that hair. I could be president of the United States, Robert.
Okay. You're John Kennedy. Anyway, so you know how you talk about what your book did for me was I better take care of my friends.
Right.
I mean, it was a big wake-up call for me. Arthur's going, wow.
Yeah.
I took my friends for granted. And they're not deal friends. We have I've had friends, 50 years now. We've been friends, and we work together. We do all these things together. But the next strength for me as I push into my 80s is how do I use what you call crystallized intelligence. Another thing
Right.
you said was one thing. The pain from all the screw ups propels me up the ladder the
Yeah.
next time. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is all my fuck-ups take me to the next level.
Yeah.
And so I've been remaking friends and all this because when Kim and I are getting divorced because she's had it with me. But anyway, she goes, suddenly my social network disappeared
Right.
because she was the one that had all the friends.
Right.
So for a male, it's called loneliness. Any comments on that
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
older
Yeah.
men?
Absolutely. So if all of your social network actually comes from work and you're a total striver, woe be unto you. It's a real problem. And one of the interesting things that we see in the data on friendship and companionship is who you spend your time with. And guys who work really hard and work all the time, they're with colleagues and work buddies all the time, and it drops off and they're with nobody after that.
Right.
Huge problem because they don't have a dense social network. They don't have a close relationship with their adult kids. They don't live close to their grandkids. Usually their wives are spending time with other people if they're still married. And your colleagues are like, Robert who? I mean, that's the problem because you're not working anymore. It's all deal. It's no real is what it comes down to. And the result of that is it's too late, generally speaking. If you retire and you don't have any friendships, you got to do a lot of work before that. Now, that said, I've worked with a lot of real strivers who retire at 60 or 70 or 75 years old, and they build thick social networks, but it's a lot more work later. I recommend that everybody listening to us, no matter what a striver that you are, that you dedicate at least 1 hour a week to talking to at least one close friend who has nothing to do with you professionally. You will never be sorry that you did that, but don't neglect that because that's something outside of your marriage that you're going to absolutely need as you get older, and you're going to look forward to it more and more.
Yeah. And so this thing on friendship, so many questions for you. But one of the things about, my disease is called foot and mouth disease. and what you said was don't count to 10, count to 30.
Yeah. Yeah. Count to
And I
30.
still haven't got that one.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Um,
you're in the public eye all the time, Robert, and there are going to be times when you say what you think because you're a little bit tired. You can be forgiven, I think, but there is a rule, which is when you're angry, when somebody annoys you, count to 30, and while you're counting to 30, think about the consequences of what you wanted to say, right?
Everybody listen to that is that what Arthur did was not just counting.
Yeah.
If I say what I really want to say, what's the consequence?
Right. Imagine
That's
the
why
consequences. Go through it. So you're at work and there's somebody who just grinds your gears day after day. And you're like, I'm going to tell her she's a moron. And so you imagine yourself telling her she's a moron while you're counting to 30. You're a moron. And then you're like, oh, look at that look on her face. It's 7, 8, 9. She's picking up the phone. This can't be good. 11, 12. She's calling human resources. That's, I'm getting called down to human resources. By the time you get to 30, you saved yourself a mental trip to human resources. Congratulations. And you won't say that thing that you wanted to say is the bottom line. You can save yourself a ton of grief.
Yeah, that's why I call it the foot and mouth disease. It's been the most pricey, most costly disease I have ever had because I just speak right off I'm an ex-Marine, former Marine,
Are you really?
And
I guess I knew that. My son was in the 3.5. He was a sniper in the 3.5. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Marines do not care if it hurts your feelings.
They suffer fools
fact,
very poorly.
Right. If you're not hurting somebody's feeling, you're not being a good Marine officer. You know what I mean?
There you go. There you go.
I carried that over, unfortunately. My parents
it's worked
didn't
for
teach
you.
me that.
What's that?
Yeah, my parents were really great people, but I learned to be blunt.
Yeah.
And I went to academy and I went to Marine Corps. But I adopted it more and more the more successful I got. That was the bad thing.
Well, I understand that there's a certain cost involved in it, but let me talk a little bit about your virtue in doing this. The truth is that when it comes to talking to people about their future and their success and their money, they need straight talk. The worst problem that we have in our society is an excess of empathy. Empathy is feeling somebody else's pain. We need more compassion and less empathy, quite frankly. Compassion is to understand somebody's pain and give them what they need, even if they don't like it. That's incredibly important. And I read your work and I listen to you, and you're an incredibly compassionate person. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to say, thank you, Robert, that makes me feel so good. That's not the point. The point is not to feel good. The point is to learn something, to do the right thing, to pull yourself out of the ditch. You've pulled many thousands of people's cars out of the ditch, metaphorically. And the reason is because you said the truth. You say the truth, and you're not gilding the lily, man. I mean, you're telling people what they want to hear. You've brought your marine spirit to the finances of millions of people. And I thank you for that.
Correct. So I got two last questions because our time is so fast here. One of them is, I forgot the first one already, but what you talk about Beethoven and Bach, they did their best work in the 70s and 80s or something like that.
Well, actually they did yeah. So Bach and Beethoven, of course, is two of the most famous composers and fabulous composers who ever lived. They were most innovative when they were young. They were less innovative when they were older. And this is important. They became great, especially Bach became a great teacher when he was older. And this is incredibly important because that's the difference between the skill that we call fluid intelligence, which is your innovative capacity. That's your startup entrepreneur capacity. And then it's your venture capitalist capacity, which is your teacher curve. That's crystallized intelligence, which comes later. So everybody needs to think about the progression of their own life and career, where they go from innovator to instructor, from star litigator to managing partner, from startup entrepreneur to venture capitalist, where you're going to actually figure out how to manage people, create teams, fire people up, teach them what they need to learn. And you can be incredibly rich and successful in that second curve, but don't try to stay on the first curve. You're going to do your most original, innovative thinking before you're 50. You're going to do your best synthetic thinking and your best teaching when you're over 60. That's the bottom line. And so you got to make sure that you're in a position to do one or the other according to where you are in your life.
Good. Another thing you wrote about is the power of interest.
Yeah.
You know, a person has to be interested or something. You were talking about that in the book.
Yeah. That's you know, my students always want to know, should I follow my passion? Should I do the most fun thing, or should I go try to save the world? Those are always things. Because, you know, there's two kinds of graduation speeches. One is, you know, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. That's one speech. Speech number two is go save the world. No pressure, right? And the truth is they're both really bad advice. What people should do if they want to have the best career where they do their best work and create the most value is to find the thing that's most interesting to them. That's your oracle on what the best work that you can possibly do, because it mixes fun with passion, with value creation. It's the whole ikigai idea of what the world needs, what they'll pay you to do, what you love to do, and what you're good at. Those four things at the same time. Your oracle on that is the most interesting thing to you. You clearly found it, by the way. You found it decades ago. And the result is just, I mean, it speaks for itself.
Okay. So my final question is this, because what's happening at my generation, our generation, really, my best friend, we became billionaires at the same time. And what he did was he paid for his kids everything. He paid for everything. He bought them mansions, he bought them this and that. But you were saying without paying, there's no satisfaction or something along that line. So they're the empty vessels of rich young girls, very pretty. And they have nothing going for them.
It's terrible. It's terrible. Yeah. It's just something I talk about a lot with high net worth people. A lot, right? So you grew up without a lot of money, right?
That's right.
And then you made a bunch of money, right? Yeah. And so your kids have a different expectation than you did. You're the lucky one.
Right.
This is the thing. You're the lucky one because you got to earn your success, and everybody deserves the dignity of earning their success. The problem is when you make a lot of money. I mean, I've made more money than I ever thought I would. I'm a college professor, for Pete's sake. I never had any expectations at all, but good things happened, right? People bought my books, et cetera, et cetera. Well, my kids paid attention to that. And so the result is it would be very easy for me to buy them their cars and to buy them their houses and to pay for their vacations because I can, and I love them. It's a mistake. With your kids, once they're of age, once they're grown-ups, they should go off the family plan. And I mean that metaphorically, in all the family plan manifestations. Never pay for your kids' consumption. Only pay for investment. Pay for their education. If you want to, you can help them with the down payment on their house. Stake their company if they have a startup all day long. Those are really, really, even if you think the company idea is not so great, still stake the company. That's fine. But don't pay for their vacations. Don't pay for their cars. don't do that, because they deserve the dignity of earning their own success, and they will resent it even though they want it.
Why does that rob the person of their, what does it do? I think the word was satisfaction. It's been a while since I read the book.
Yeah.
Something is missing when you just get what you want without earning it.
Yeah, the reason is basically this. When you pay for your kids' consumption, you're treating them like a liability to manage on the balance sheet. When you pay for their investment, you're treating them like an asset on the balance sheet. And they know the difference. They know nobody wants to be a liability. Everybody wants to be an asset. And we're responsible for treating our kids like assets, not like liabilities.
Right. Well, Arthur, time has gone so fast, but I was saying to everybody, my friends who have read your book, I handed it to all my, addicted to success friends. And what they want to do is have a book study. For years, I used to have book studies. We'd put about 200 people in the room. I charge them an exorbitant amount to read your book. And what we do is we sit around, we discuss chapters of your book and things like this stuff. So my company has asked that we reinstate that. So when we do that, because we will do it for your book, I'm going to ask you to either come in via Zoom or schedule with your schedule, so you can come to our little book study group.
I would love that. I would just love that. I'm there, Robert.
Okay. Well, Arthur, thank you very much. And everybody, this is the book. It's called Strength to Strength. It's for people who are addicted to success. And Arthur, thank you for your contribution to my life and to the world's happiness, most importantly.
Likewise, Robert, you've done so much good for so many millions of people. You've benefited so many, and I'm one of them. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. Keep up the good work. When we come back, we'll have our final words on this subject, from strength to strength, with Arthur Brooks. Welcome back, and thank Arthur Brooks. Again, this book is called Strength to Strength. I'm recommending all of my friends read this book, unless you're one of those guys who just goes through life +1, -1, +1, minus. You don't need the book. But if you're addicted to success, you want more happiness, wealth, money, this book is incredibly powerful. I said to Arthur, you should write it about me or for me. He said both. But he actually wrote it for himself. So if you're addicted to wanting to be more successful, this is the book. Any final thoughts there, Sandra?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of to reiterate what's already been said, just beyond excited to have this gentleman on with this book. I think we're just looking forward to diving into it, and it just kind of decodes how to go through life in a more balanced way.
Yeah. So stay tuned. We'll make an announcement. We'll have a book study coming up. I don't know when it'll be. And our company will study it. And, probably about 200 or 300 people show up for it. I charge an arm and a leg to study a book. That's how you make money. But people find it the most powerful process, because you're like-minded people and you're pushing each other along versus pulling each other down here. And we'll coordinate it with Arthur so he can come and speak to us personally. So it's a book study from Rich Dad. And so I want to thank Arthur. Thank you, Sandra. Look, our whole company is so excited about Arthur compared to my other banker friends. But I'm glad he's there, because his real gift is how to be happier. Being happy is priceless. So thank you all. Thanks for watching the Rich Dad Show.
Thank you.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.